Welcome back, horror movie lovers. Today, we're gonna dive into another intense and gory film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003. Our story kicks off when 5 young friends, who have just returned from Mexico, are on their way to a rock concert. On the road, they're all laughing and chatting, completely unaware of the danger lurking just ahead.
Shoot! You almost hit her!
What the fuck was she doing walking in the middle of the road?
A woman, looking completely disoriented, walks past their car. Aaron and Pepper, concerned about her state, immediately rush after her. But they hear the woman muttering something repeatedly.
I just need to get away.
What?
Got to get away.
From who?
I want to go home.
Okay, we can't leave her out here like this. Hey, let us help you, okay?
The two quickly usher the woman into the car. The others in the car try to calm her down, hoping to find out what she's been through. But the woman is beyond listening. She seems to be in a state of complete collapse. But then unexpectedly,
No. You're going the wrong way. Stop, you're going the wrong way!
the next second, the woman suddenly pulls a handgun from her pocket.
I'm gonna die.
Grab it!
Instantly, everyone was terrified. They had never witnessed such a horrifying scene. That's when Jack suggested they call the police. But to their surprise, Morgan exploded at the suggestion. It turned out they had brought a small bag of weed before setting off. If the police showed up, would they have to explain the weed or the body? What if the police imagined a drug-induced murder? Then they'd be in deep trouble, unable to clear their names. But to quickly put an end to the situation, Jack simply tossed the toy containing the weed into the bushes. Once they had calmed down, they decided to drive first and look for a place to make a call along the way. After driving for a short while, they spotted a dilapidated gas station by the roadside. The group quickly pulled over, as if they'd found a lifeline. Inside the gas station, they found only an old woman.
Ma'am, we need to report a suicide.
Something like this comes along, makes folks realize how crazy the world is out there.
Right. Would you mind calling the sheriff now?
After hearing this, the old woman immediately called the sheriff for them. But after hanging up, the old woman told them the sheriff was at a mill not far away. She said they could either go find the sheriff now to deal with the body and file a report, or wait here for a few hours. But if they waited for several hours, the stench from the body in the car probably couldn't even be masked by perfume. After weighing their options, the group decided to go directly to find the sheriff. Not long after, the group followed the old woman's directions and drove to the mill. But after getting out of the car, they didn't see any sign of the sheriff. At this point, Morgan started to get a devious idea. He figured since they couldn't find anyone anyway, they could just dump the body here and make a run for it while they still had time. So the 5 of them began to vote on what to do. Lewis hesitated for 2 seconds, thinking this plan was viable. Now it was just up to Jack. If he also gave his nod, they could dump the body and escape. Everyone could go back to their own homes and families and pretend nothing had ever happened.
I really don't think it matters where we leave her.
Well, it matters to me, if that means anything.
And look,
That girl has got parents out there somewhere who's gonna want her back, not just dumped on the side of the road like a piece of trash.
So the group had no choice but to brace themselves and decide to take a look around the mill. But no sooner had they entered the house, they spotted a small boy crouching in the shadows of a corner. To avoid scaring the child, they made an effort to speak softly. They wanted to ask the little boy if he knew where the sheriff was. The boy told them that the sheriff was at home, drinking. If they wanted to find him, they'd have to walk through the nearby woods to his house. So Erin decided that she and her boyfriend Jack would go to the sheriff's house. The other 3 would stay at the mill, guarding the van and the body inside to prevent any accidents. With that, the 2 made their way through the woods. After walking for nearly half an hour, An old house appeared before them. But how to describe it? If this house had a sign that read, Haunted House Tour, tickets $50, I'd still think the price was too low. The two then braced themselves and knocked on the door.
Is anybody home?
Hello! What do you want?
Are you the sheriff?
Do I look like a sheriff?
I don't know, I can't see you.
Stand back from the door.
The door was opened by an old man in a wheelchair. He told them the sheriff didn't live there. If they needed to find him, they could come inside and make a call. Erin thanked the old man and walked into the house.
I said she could call him. You wait outside.
Okay, Chief.
I ain't looking for trouble.
Don't shoot.
Then the old man ushered Erin into the living room. After Erin called the sheriff, she immediately explained the situation to him. The sheriff, after listening, told her he would arrive in about 30 minutes. Erin hung up the phone and was about to leave when the old man suddenly called out to her from behind. It turned out he had fallen while using the restroom and wanted Erin to help him up. But just as she bent down to help him, someone walked past Erin from behind. Meanwhile, outside, Jack, seeing his girlfriend hadn't come out yet, decided to go inside and check. But he searched the house and couldn't find any trace of Erin. Just then, Jack heard some movement inside a room. He intended to push the door open and look, but accidentally knocked a bell off the door. The moment he bent down to pick it up, masked man, like dragging a dead pig, dragged Jack into the basement. That was where he processed his prey, and Jack's face would soon become Leatherface's new mask. Meanwhile, back outside, when Erin came out, she found her boyfriend missing.
Where is he?
I don't know. But he's not in my house.
Thanks.
Erin assumed her boyfriend had grown impatient and returned to the mill, so she rushed back to the mill. She informed the others that the sheriff would arrive in half an hour. To her surprise, the sheriff had already been there. The body had also been taken away. Apparently, just 10 minutes earlier, a sheriff had arrived. After assessing the situation with the group, he began wrapping the body in plastic wrap. He then instructed Morgan and Lewis to load the body into the trunk. And then he simply drove off. Erin didn't give it much thought at first, but when she realized Jack still hadn't returned, she grew anxious. Suddenly, the horn of a dilapidated car nearby blared. The group went to investigate. It turned out a tree branch was pressing down on the horn. Meanwhile, Morgan had been staring intently at a nearby car. As he spoke, Morgan pulled a glass bottle from the car. Inside, to their surprise, was a photograph. The person in the picture was the very woman who had committed suicide in their van. They flipped it over. On the back was a family portrait. The more they pondered, the more they sensed something was terribly wrong with this place. At this point, Morgan suggested they leave the area immediately. Morgan reached out, asking Erin for the car keys.
Well, who put you in charge?
Well, if you guys just want to take off, that's fine, but I am not getting in that van and leaving without him.
Give me the keys.
Don't even think about it.
Andy.
I don't know about you guys, but I happen to like my teeth right where they are.
Lewis also felt they shouldn't abandon Jack, so the four decided to split up. Lewis and Erin would go back to the old house to search. Morgan and Pepper could stay behind and wait if they were too scared. Soon, Erin and Louis stealthily made their way to the vicinity of the house. They decided to split up. Erin deliberately kept the old man occupied at the door, while Louis seized the opportunity to slip in quietly through the side door. The moment he stepped inside, a putrid smell of rotting flesh hit him. He walked into the kitchen, where he found rows of dried meat hanging from the ceiling. The stench from the refrigerator was equally overwhelming. But just as he closed the refrigerator door,
Andy?
Erin couldn't keep up the act any longer and burst into the kitchen. Fortunately, Louis was unharmed. Just as the two were about to leave, The old man came rolling over in his wheelchair.
The hell are you doing in my house? Little turd. You're so dead.
Lewis grabbed the chainsaw, which was stuck in a gap in the wooden planks. With a sudden surge of strength, he flipped over and scrambled to his feet. He stumbled towards the door, but he didn't make it far. Leatherface quickly caught up. He raised his chainsaw and brutally severed Lewis's left leg. Then he hoisted him up like a rag doll and carried him into the basement. "Please put me down." Leatherface then impaled Louis's back with a meat hook from the wall. He then rubbed a large handful of coarse salt into his severed leg wound. Afterward, he wrapped the wound tightly with paper. The pain was excruciating. Meanwhile, Erin rushed back to the mill and immediately dove back into the van. But the dilapidated van seemed to be working against her. It simply wouldn't start.
Erin, what the fuck's going on? What?
What?
Take it easy.
God, thank God.
Take it easy.
My friend, you need help. My friend right now. My friend's dying. My friend's being
Settle down.
hurt.
Just take a couple of deep breaths.
There's some God.
Just quiet down.
But the sheriff didn't care about their well-being in the slightest. Instead, his eyes immediately fixated on the weed on the dashboard. Erin immediately explained that the car wasn't theirs.
I smell bullshit. Get out of the van! Out! On your face! All three of you! Get on!
Before they could even react, the sheriff declared that Jack must have killed the woman and was now on the run, fearing punishment. The contraband in the car was the best evidence of the murder. He didn't. It was a guy with a chainsaw. Stop it, stop it. Immediately after, the sheriff dragged Morgan off the ground, ordering him to reenact how the woman had committed suicide. Morgan wanted to object, but the sheriff's gun was already pressed against his forehead. With no other choice, Morgan got into the car, mimicking the woman's posture from earlier, and put the gun into his own mouth. Just then, a spark of defiance ignited within Morgan.
You motherfucker! Get on the fucking floor! I said get on the floor!
What the hell are you doing? Please, just please put the gun down, okay? Please don't kill me. Oh my God, Morgan.
You lying fuck!
No sooner had she spoken than Pepper suddenly urged Morgan to pull the trigger. She'd suspected the sheriff was trouble all along. Ever since he started bagging the body, she knew something wasn't right. Upon hearing her words, Morgan steeled himself and pulled the trigger. Oh no, it was a blank. The sheriff snatched the pistol away and dragged Morgan towards his car. On the way, Morgan looked utterly defeated. He felt completely stripped of his rights. But the sheriff had no patience for his pleas. He simply grabbed a liquor bottle from the car door. Then he picked up his walkie-talkie and ordered Leatherface to head to the mill to bring the other two girls back. It turns out this man wasn't a real sheriff at all, but Leatherface's cousin Charlie. Meanwhile, back at the mill, Erin refused to sit idly by. She started tinkering with two wires. To her surprise, she actually got the engine running. Erin quickly jumped into the driver's seat, floored the gas, and sped off. The two of them huddled together in terror, but it wasn't long before a large hole was ripped open in the van's roof. Leatherface reached his hand inside and grabbed Erin by her hair. Pepper, seeing him distracted with Erin, shoved open the car door and bolted out. But Andy couldn't outrun Leatherface. Just a few steps out, she was brutally sawn in the body from behind by Leatherface with a chainsaw. Andy collapsed and died on the spot. But when Leatherface turned around, Erin's blood ran cold, because at this moment, Leatherface was wearing the face of her own boyfriend, Jack. Erin completely lost it. She immediately took off running. Erin didn't know how long she had been running until an RV appeared before her eyes.
Please, 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 let me in. Please, help me, please.
Inside the RV lived two women, a plump older woman and a young girl. They immediately poured Erin a cup of hot tea. Just then, a baby's cry suddenly came from inside the RV. The young girl immediately stood up, preparing to go check. Just then, Erin's gaze accidentally swept across a photo frame on the table. Her whole body froze. Wasn't this the same photo Morgan had found in the car? Suddenly, Erin felt a wave of dizziness. She stumbled towards the inner room and saw the young girl holding a baby.
That's not your baby.
You stole her!
She's mine.
It turns out these two women were also members of this twisted family. They specialized in luring victims. When Erin woke up again, she found herself tied up in Leatherface's living room. Soon after, the old woman told Leatherface to throw Erin into the basement first. As Erin struggled to her feet, she realized the entire place was filled with specimens of human organs. Erin recoiled in horror, but when she looked up, she saw Andy hanging above a piano. Only one of his feet could barely reach the piano keys. Erin immediately rushed forward, trying to get Andy down, but she simply wasn't strong enough. After countless attempts, the iron hook remained stubbornly in place.
Please, finish it. Do it.
I can't.
There's a knife.
Erin knew this might truly be the best outcome for Andy, so she picked up a sharp knife nearby. Just then, Erin heard some movement nearby. When she walked over to investigate, she found Morgan sitting in a bathtub. But thankfully, he was still alive. Just then, a small, slender figure emerged from the shadows. It was the little boy. The little boy immediately told the two of them to follow him. Erin then helped Morgan, following closely behind the little boy. He led the two of them to a hidden exit. Erin wanted to take the little boy with them, but he stayed behind to hold off Leatherface, allowing Erin and Morgan to escape first. Erin crawled out with all her might, finally breaking free. The two of them stumbled into a small cabin. She then pushed Morgan into a cabinet, while she herself hid in a small hole. But to her surprise, it was full of large rats. To avoid being discovered, Erin had to grit her teeth and endure it. But just then, unexpectedly, Morgan knocked the chainsaw out of Leatherface's hand and held onto him tightly. But Morgan's build was no match for Leatherface. He was hung up like a chicken. Immediately after, Leatherface started his chainsaw. Erin seized the chaos and rushed out of the cabin. Luckily, there was a fence in the yard. Being small, she quickly slipped right through it. But Leatherface, being too large, tripped and fell to the ground. The chainsaw in his hand landed right on his own leg. Erin ran out of the woods. A large slaughterhouse appeared before her eyes. Without a second thought, she rushed straight inside. The next second, the sound of the chainsaw came from behind her again. Luckily, Erin was quite thin. She squeezed directly through the gap under the door. Then Erin picked up a butcher knife. She hid inside a metal locker, holding her breath. The sound of the chainsaw was getting closer and closer. Leatherface opened the locker doors one by one, searching. Just as he opened the locker door opposite hers, this attack was truly brutal. Erin chopped off Leatherface's hand right at the elbow. It fell to the ground, along with the chainsaw. Erin didn't have time to finish him off. She dropped the knife and ran outside. She ran onto the highway. The driver was a kind-faced older man. Seeing her in such a state, he immediately let her get in the car without a word. The driver was curious about what had happened to Erin, but she was already too terrified to speak coherently. She kept repeating just one thing. She wanted to go home. As the car drove on, Erin suddenly saw a familiar billboard by the roadside. The driver was completely baffled. He thought the girl might be overly traumatized and having some mental issues. He didn't argue with her. Instead, he drove the car straight to the front of a store, planning to call for help. Erin knew that this driver was very likely not coming back. She pushed open the car door and went around to the back door of the house. Looking inside, she saw the entire twisted family and the baby were all there. She secretly vowed to rescue the child. Meanwhile, the driver described Erin's appearance. Charlie immediately knew who it was upon hearing the description. He immediately went to check the truck, but Erin was long gone. Unexpectedly at that very moment, Erin drove the car back and forth, repeatedly running over Charlie, until he lay on the ground, completely motionless. Erin thought she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But the next second, Leatherface, with one hand severed, was still just as ferocious. Erin stomped on the gas pedal, and, with the child she had secretly rescued, she sped out of that living hell. At the end of the movie, we return to the police documentary footage from the beginning. Following the events, the police launched a full investigation into the old house. What they found inside the house left all the officers present speechless. Besides the bodies, the police also pulled out over 3,000 collectibles. Various pieces of jewelry, identification documents, and clothing were all trophies left behind by the Leatherface family from years of murder. Over 3,000 items. Just imagine the scale of the case when you consider these 2 points. The police decided to check the cellar again, but they were suddenly attacked by Leatherface. The camera footage violently shook, and 2 officers were killed on the spot. This became the only footage ever captured of Leatherface, and this serial killer case remains unsolved to this day. The legend of Leatherface forever remains in the Texas wilderness, a nightmare no one dares to speak of. The movie ends here. I'm Movie Briefs. See you next time. Bye-bye.